everyone. Welcome to the Safe House, brought to you by the SafeHouse Initiative. I'm Jeff Edwards, co-chair of the SafeHouse Initiative, and your host for today's podcast. In today's episode, it's really about protecting your reputation of your business. And we're going to dive into that. And something you say, well, why are we listening about protecting our reputation? Well, it can happen to you in any kind of crisis, especially in a cyber breach. And today we have an expert in this arena to help us really dig a little deeper, think a little wider, a little bit deeper about how we can respond during a crisis situation like a cyber breach. Today, we're very fortunate, and I'm really pleased to have Stephanie Craig join us. She's the president of KITH. Stephanie, welcome to the Safe House.
Jeff, it is a pleasure to be talking to you and talking about this.
I can't wait to dig into it. I'm sure our audience is going, what has he gotten us into now? Well, hang on, kids. We're going to get there. So, hey, kind of your journey to get to where you are, and then we'll talk a little bit about the name of KITH and the origins of it, if we could.
Well, I am going to throw out a bit of a guess, Jeff, and that I am probably your guest that was born the furthest north. This is quite a small and interesting distinction. I was born in the Canadian Arctic, and I'm probably the only person to have ever worked in the U.S. House and Senate and the Canadian House and Senate. I've had just the great pleasure of growing up in both countries. And I'm really fortunate to have been able to live in both countries. And so, grew up all over the Canadian Arctic, the Canadian West. My dad was a Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer, so it's a lot like the military.
Wow.
Those guys with the red jackets and the hats. Which he didn't wear all the time, by the way. So that you get to move a lot. And I just kind of continued on, started doing political campaigns, ended up in Ottawa, and then ended up in grad school in Washington, D.C., and couldn't quite give up the political bug. And politics is a great training for managing crisis, and not just the ones they create themselves.
Yeah, self-inflicted. Yep.
Exactly. And so I really found in the middle of so many of the crises, and when I say crises, my mom used to joke that I had been through every kind of natural disaster but a tsunami, which I just really don't want to cross off the list. And so really just I feel very calm. And I think that is a common thread amongst people that do what I do, which is you feel very calm in the middle of crises, in the middle of chaos. I've also been recently told by my stepdaughter that's a telltale sign of ADHD, but I haven't had that confirmed yet either.
Well, so you're a battle-tested, battle-hardened, because all of your political backgrounds and all the crises you have been through.
Absolutely. And it is really something that you figure out. And then one of the distinctions that I learned to see as I moved throughout my career and really through my experience is that so many people try just about crisis communications, and crisis communications is critically important, but that there is a larger approach to crisis that needs to be identified, and that is crisis management. So the end result of crisis management is good crisis communication. But there's a whole back end to it, which is where it's basically where I've ended up now is running a firm where we do crisis management, preparation, mitigation, response, the whole ecosystem, because I believe so wholeheartedly in the need to prepare for crisis, and that you can prepare for crisis. And all of that experience that you talked about, the political experience, presidential campaigns, Capitol Hill, Parliament Hill, natural disasters, all of that shows me that there's a piece of intellectual exercises, I guess, that lies between risk management, crisis response in the police, fire, natural disaster way, and crisis communication. And that all surrounds reputation.
Yeah.
And so many folks think of particularly organizational crisis as something that you know, lives in a vacuum, that a cyber incident lives in a vacuum, that your widget factory not making a widget,
Yeah.
or that lives in a vacuum. Your CFO taking off with your pension fund lives in a vacuum,
Mm.
and it doesn't. Each of those, even though they are very operational type crises, have a reputational effect. And the World Economic Forum has set a level of, I believe it's 25% of a company's value is its reputation.
Hmm.
Other folks have put it between 25 and 45% of a company's value is its reputation. And so as you think about what you want to protect,
Yeah.
you don't want someone running off with your pension fund. You
Yeah.
don't want your widget factory burning down, and you don't want anyone to get into your IT system because they all have value.
Yeah.
You work to prevent those from happening. You have insurance in case something does happen. Your reputation is as big as of an asset as all of that. You
Mm.
need to invest in protecting it.
Yeah. You need to be trusted, and you need to be reliable, and you need to deliver consistently. I think that so you're really talking a more strategic view of crisis management, which most people say, oh, crisis communications, that's just media, that's this and this. And it's really a lot more. It's actually a huge part of risk management. It's an overall arching risk management. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. A lot of what you can do when you're thinking about crisis management is preparation.
Okay.
So if I would actually look at crisis management as an iceberg, that, 10% of what you see is the crisis. 90% of what it is the preparation.
Okay. All right. So how do you break that down, or how do you communicate that to your clients? Just curious.
Well, and so the way we work, as we go in and we will do a diagnostic, we'll talk to people, we'll figure out.
Hmm.
And we do it under an umbrella of about 15 key components, 15 elements
Okay.
that we know that if you are green lit in every one of those 15 elements, you are ready to go. You don't need us. Thanks for the cup of coffee. Away
Yeah.
you go. Have not met anybody that was green lit through all 15 elements. And they break down into three different parts. So I think if like most of your listeners, they've heard about crisis management, crisis
Yep.
communication,
Yep.
and speed. You have to be speedy.
Hmm.
It's true. You have to be speedy, but you can't be speedy without strategy. You have to be
Yeah.
strategically fast.
Okay.
And so that strategic speed, which I will not disagree with anybody in the world that says, yes, you have to be fast. Mitigating a crisis means that you're fast. Absolutely. But on the other side of that equation are what we consider two bigger buckets. One, clarity,
Yes.
clarity in who you are, who
Hmm.
your customers are, what your values are.
Okay.
And then trust, trust in your people, your policies, and your procedures in a crisis are going to work. They're understood and they're practiced. And so clarity plus trust equals strategic speed. And the clarity and the trust are here's the good news. They all can happen before you find yourself in a crisis.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that where you start then, having that conversation and say, okay, let's be really clear about what it is, and is that how you start the conversation? And you obviously start with the senior leaders of the team, I would think.
Absolutely. So that is one thing that's really important when we're talking about this is there has
Yeah.
to be buy-in from the executive level.
Yeah.
Uh, Sometimes this is a whole culture shift in the way you think. And so if this is not demonstrated by the leadership team, it's not going to go anywhere. We have one client that their CEO who was incredibly busy. We were doing a on-site simulation, which is one of the ways you can prepare.
Hmm.
And the CEO came and sat down in the front row. He was the first one there, and he sat in the front row, and that dictated for the rest of the team, okay, this is important. He's invested.
Yep.
So we're invested. So
Yep.
that leadership within the crisis preparedness thinking has to be there. And so as we look to who we have to work with, not even
Yeah.
have to work with, get to work with, they are all on the leadership team because we also preach very, very loudly a core crisis team.
Hmm.
The middle of a crisis is not the time to figure out who has responsibility for what and
Yeah.
who has subject matter expertise and who has decision making authority. So one of the first steps that we recommend to people, and this is before we get into, do you know what your values are? Who are your key stakeholders?
Hmm.
Do you have a core crisis team?
Hmm.
Most people look at us and say, what is that? And
Yeah.
we explain it, which a core crisis team are probably 8 to 10 people
Yeah.
that have both decision making authority
Hmm.
or subject matter expertise. And on a really, really good day, they have both.
Yeah.
And so that team is the one that get the information, make the decisions, deploy the crisis strategy.
Okay.
And they're the ones that disseminate out. They're the leaders in a crisis. There are some folks that are almost always on communications,
Yeah.
legal, IT a lot of times is involved because if it's not the source of the crisis, it's a solution to the crisis. Really, a lot of times you see the CFO.
Yeah.
All this needs to be paid for, and also all of it has a economic ramification.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, if your customers are angry at you, that is a bottom line impact.
So if you have like a business continuity, planning team,
Yep.
so some elements of that team would probably be there, or at least there would be a framework. And you say, maybe we could build upon that to elevate some of the what they've done to help us with our business continuity, not so much disaster recovery, but business continuity, not so much the cyber, team, but it's sort of business continuity elevated to one more level, so to speak. Would that be a good start?
Absolutely. And folks that are involved in the business continuity are likely some of them are going to sit on the core crisis team.
Yeah.
um, because it's important to when we're talking to folks because we're industry agnostic, uh,
Yep.
and it is literally about what is going to knock you off your game,
Yeah.
what is going to cause you to not do your business as usual. And if you have either the size or the force or the foresight to have a business continuity plan slash team,
Hmm.
maybe your team is 2 people. But if you have the foresight to have that, you're already one step ahead above everybody else that doesn't have that.
Yep.
And so take what you've already created
Yeah.
and start overlaying some crisis preparedness that really will make the business continuity people happy because it's a smoother transition.
Yeah, and if you had like a cyber, like a cyber response program, it's focused on just cyber. If we get hit by a cyber attack, maybe that could evolve into something a little bit bigger to be more business continuity oriented, to be more reputational protect. Maybe it's reputational response or something like that. Not crisis communications. It's really reputation response of sorts.
There's really only one department in an organization that is responsible for the
Okay.
reputation of the company. Everybody else has additional responsibilities. Communications, their sole job is to protect the reputation
Okay.
of the company. That's why crisis communications is carved out, is because it is really in their purview to protect the reputation. Smart companies have a communications person sitting at the leadership table
Hmm.
because it is their job to say when someone says, okay, well, I'm just going to use an example. We are prioritizing diversity as a company.
Yep.
Okay. So the person that produces the widgets wants to make sure that their workforce is diverse. The person that's doing the board wants to make sure that their purview is diverse. Who's thinking about if the supply chain is diverse? Who's
Mm.
thinking about if your influencers that you engage with are diverse? So that's where communications is carved out, particularly in reputation protection, because
Got
they
it.
want to have, have that overall look of saying, okay, we're not if we've made it a value, right? By
Mhm.
choice, we've made it a value. And so if we're going to have this value, we need to make sure we live the value, because if somebody asks us and we haven't lived the value, it's a reputational ding.
Yeah. Right.
And so having a communications person sitting at the leadership table
Yep.
really helps with that. And for the folks on that are listening that are IT leaders, they're a great partner
Yeah.
because they can work with you to help figure out what the information dissemination is internally. They can figure out how to message what's going on, because if there's a cyber attack and there's a
Mhm.
breach,
Mhm.
who do you need to communicate with? That isn't the purview of IT. That's the purview of communication. So one of the 15 key elements, chain of command, and understanding who needs to talk to whom during an event, or just quite frankly, as you build your crisis and your
Yeah.
reputational protection resiliency. A dear friend of mine is the head of risk management for
Yep.
a global gaming company, gambling
Mhm.
casinos,
Mhm.
and all of their crisis reputational
Mm.
response, so risk management, crisis communication, all feeds up to the chief legal counsel.
Mhm.
And he will gather their entire global team 3 times a year in Las Vegas for a barbecue, because he knows that if something's happening in, let's say, Macau, at
Mhm.
it's the day before or early morning or late at night in Las Vegas. He wants there to be no hesitation in someone picking up the phone
Hmm.
saying, "I have something going wrong. Let's get on our crisis plan."
Yeah.
And so as you think about preparation, um, knowing what each other does is really important. And from
Mhm.
an IT perspective, there's a lot of stuff that you should socialize with people so they know. I know one thing that you all talk about are ransomware attacks.
Yep. Yep.
And ransomware, while a huge problem on the face, has a whole bunch of ripple effects. Do you have ransomware insurance? What does that insurance say?
Yep.
If you know it, that's one thing. If you don't share it, that's another. Because
Yep.
if your ransomware says, "We don't pay, we don't talk,"
Mm.
and somebody talks to the press and says, "We're going to pay it," that could have both a financial ramification by voiding your insurance,
Yeah.
and could compromise whatever you're trying to do to get your information back. So understanding that you have to work symbiotically with people is actually a huge part of crisis preparation and reputational protection, because the faster people move is underpinned by who they know how to call, what information they have. If you don't have to spend the time getting people up to speed on what the situation is, the faster you can move and the faster you can respond.
Well, about 30 podcasts ago, I had some of the insurance folks on, and we're talking about the short and the long tail of a cyber attack, right? The
Mhm.
short tail is the immediate, paying the ransom, not paying the ransom, communicating, getting
Yeah.
to that. But one of the big elements, and that's a hard thing to really assess, is the reputational damage or the impact,
Mhm.
because of all the things that happen in the short term, miscommunications and or other things could have long-term, impact for the company and the reputation right there, because it's sometimes it's definable or it's underdefined or undervalued and overvalued or whatever it is. It has the biggest hit in that long
Absolutely.
tail. Yeah.
Well, and you think about your business relationships as well. Look at CrowdStrike,
Yes.
right?
Good
Uh,
example. Yeah.
we we actually wrote about this in the framework of Chi-Chi's, if you remember Chi-Chi's.
Oh,
Um,
I
the
do very
the
much so.
old
Yeah.
fast casual Mexican restaurant.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yeah.
it's very much the
And one
same.
Naperville, Illinois had one there. Anyway, go ahead, please. Yeah.
Absolutely. Uh, And so Delta was in the same place, honestly, that Chi-Chi's was.
Yeah.
Their their supplier, in this case, I'm not a technical genius. I don't know what happened. CrowdStrike
Hmm.
caused them infinite issues and caused
Hmm.
them massive reputational damage,
Yep.
and it cost them millions of dollars in customer having to cover customers and just absolute stress of on their workers. So there were so many ramifications for the customer,
Yeah.
and that tail is going to be very long. I haven't checked in recently, so I don't know, but last time I heard, Delta was suing CrowdStrike.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
tail is
That's
long.
years and years in the making in many cases. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and this morning, as I was thinking about getting on here with you, Jeff, I was thinking about Equifax
Okay. Yeah.
all those years ago, and I
Yeah.
read somewhere, I think it was last year, that they're still paying people,
I wouldn't doubt it. How about Exxon?
right?
Yeah.
Well, and so like the tail of these is very long, and it's not. And I think folks think about reputational damage as we're on the front page of the news.
Hmm.
And that's one part to it. Like sometimes if you're publicly traded, it's your stock price gets hit. If
Yeah.
CrowdStrike is an example of that. But at the end, it's the trust.
Yes.
It's do your stakeholders trust you?
Yep.
And building so clarity plus trust, right?
Yes.
Your trust and your when I say people, I don't just mean your internal people. I mean your also your stakeholders. And that's a really key part of understanding reputational protection is who are your key stakeholders
Hmm.
and working on building the trust with them, understanding who they are, understanding where they get information, because if you build that trust with them and something happens, like um we'll use CrowdStrike again. If you are very very focused on who your stakeholders are
Hmm.
and you communicate with them where they are, you've spent time building loyalty and trust with them. And I think that's where Delta is going to recover the best is people that are Delta people are very loyal Delta people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that frustration, they've put in the effort, they've built the equity with those groups to create the trust
Yep.
that yes, did this damage it? Yeah. But the long-term damage is whether people are going to trust you with their information again.
Yep.
And if you build that trust with them beforehand,
Yep.
they likely will. And so the tail is very long. And there are some companies, um, I mentioned just a minute ago, Chi-Chi's.
Hmm.
So for those people that don't remember that, the Chi-Chi's, they were everywhere. And then I can't remember the year, but they'd gone through some changes, but then they had a really bad foodborne illness
Mm.
scandal
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
unfortunately killed a number of people in Pittsburgh, and they never recovered from that.
Yeah. That was in the early 80s, wasn't it? Something like
Yeah,
that.
I think
Yeah.
so, yeah,
Yeah.
and so people didn't trust that they could eat there, and that is a huge part of the dynamic of learning of building trust and where the tail is. Can you recover? Absolutely, but I do think that it is a direct equation from the amount of effort you put in understanding who your stakeholders are, what they value, and where they congregate
Yeah.
to how fast you can recover and build trust again.
So Stephanie, let me veer off on something a little bit different here. Kith, the origins of Kith. Can you
Mhm.
kind of walk through it because it's fascinating, and I'd love for you to share this, yeah, with our audience.
Absolutely. So, our founder, his name is Bill Coletti.
Hmm.
And he used to be the global head of crisis for Hill and Knowlton, which I think just had a big merger with another PR company. Well, he decided that he wanted to do things a little bit different. And so he came out and he created Kith. And it actually came out of a very interesting story is he believes wholeheartedly in sharing information. We
Hmm.
are so kith and kin. And kith are the people that you surround yourselves with by choice. And that is really how we look at it. We make our clients friends. If they weren't friends to
Hmm.
start off with, we make them friends coming on the other side.
Yeah.
We really make it a habit of just sharing information, um, because that's what you do with Kith. And we want to keep growing,
Yeah.
growing our community. We have a thing that we kind of the name of it is Crisis of the Month. I refer to it as the Oh Crap newsletter. Um, And so one thing we preach is that yes, we want people to do simulations, big scale simulations. We want them to do tabletops. We want them to do workshops.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's just as simple as holding up, we used to say newspaper, now I say phone, and saying, pointing to whatever your industry newsletter is and saying, what would we do if this happened to us?
Yeah.
So we've operationalized it in a way every month, beginning of every month. We will send out an email to 150 friends of Kith,
Hmm.
and it's just a scenario with 4 questions. It's not a sales tool, it's free. It will
Yep.
always be free, and it's something that really underpins who we are and our philosophy as an organization is we
Yeah.
wanna be generous with our
Yeah.
intellectual property, and quite honestly, evangelize our idea, we wanna really beat the drum of preparation, and
Yeah.
it's obviously about business, but it's about a larger philosophy as well.
Well, yeah, that's I guess, and thank you for being on the Safe House because that's our philosophy too. No matter where we work to make money, this is where we come to offer genuinely, and it sounds like your business values really are you exemplify clarity and trust. The
Yep,
two cornerstones of this whole reputational protection program, if you will.
absolutely. We're not. I think this comes from both me and the founder come out of politics, so our
Yeah.
capacity to when you are not on when your name's not on the ballot, you tend to not be as eloquent as those
Mm,
that are, and we're both very very blunt, and so you are very clear where you stand with us,
yeah.
but we do really want to build trust with our community because you never know when you're going to get to work with somebody. And um I think we all came together, honestly, Jeff, because we believe that independently. Like Bill and I
Yes.
used to be at the same um consulting firm, you know in the early 2000s,
Yeah.
where and I was, a wonderkin child, and so working at a consulting firm, and we come with a different philosophy, which is,
Yeah.
we are engaged with our clients. We want to become a partners to our clients,
Yeah.
um and talk to people that are genuine in their sharing of information, like you said, you folks
Yeah.
at Safe House.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things we like to do is to try to provide, that first step on any journey.
Mhm.
Is always the hardest to take, and usually, if it's practical and tangible, it's easier to take. So, if you were to offer one word of that our audience today can do to take a step forward to help prepare for their reputational damage that will probably occur at some point in their business. Because if you business long enough, you're going to have a crisis of some sort or fashion.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So prepare for it. What would that first step be that you would recommend to take?
Well, of course, some of the bigger ones are, budget for it, talk to other
Yeah.
people in your organization. But if you do one thing tomorrow,
Yep.
well, most people don't really have staff meetings on Thursday. So on Monday, at
Yeah.
your staff meeting, hold up your phone with industry, your
Hmm.
leading industry publication, find the top story and say, what would we do if this happened to us?
That's a great recommendation. Great starting point.
And if people don't know, that's a really good indicator that you have to have some very hard discussions about preparing for crisis and protecting your reputation.
Wow. I tell you what, Stephanie, you've been a delight to talk with, and you are, in fact, as far north of being, of anyone I've ever known, the Arctic Circle, I believe. So, I'll have to challenge any of my friends down in the Antarctic to raise their hand and see if they can beat you for being closer to the pole, albeit the other one. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us on the Safe House today, and welcome back anytime. You have so much more to offer our listeners, and definitely appreciate you coming on and sharing with us.
Thank you, Jeff. It was just a joy to hang out with you for this time. So anytime I can, I will come back.
That's our podcast for today. I'm Jeff Edwards for the SafeHouse Initiative. Thanks for joining us, and remember, be safe, be resilient, and be kind to each other. For more information about the SafeHouse Initiative, please use your mobile device to scan the QR code on the screen, or send us an email at info@safehouseinitiative.org, or visit us on our website, safehouseinitiative.org. We look forward to hearing from you.